君の言葉繰り返し寝ても覚めてもやまないそっけない君の笑顔が恋しくて星に願うのまた会えるよね
All right, is it time? Yes, it is. We're live. All right, back up and running. Took a day off yesterday to work offline, and I think I'm kind of enjoying the groove of working live every other day. So I think what my new thing will be probably Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday for live work for about 4 hours. I'll give that a shot for a little bit, and if that's what I decide to commit to, then I'll go ahead and post the schedule. But anyway, back to the game engine. So last time we had implemented proper mixed fields for Dear ImGui. That's a fix that I'm probably going to be pushing as a pull request soon. I just haven't done that yet. I'm gonna sit on this for a little bit, see if there's anything I need to improve. There's arguably a style factor that like not everybody will want their mixed fields to look the same way when they are mixed. Presently, the way that I have it working is that it's just a hyphen. So whenever you have a mixed field, it'll instead of giving you a value, it'll give you just a single dash. I took a little bit of time yesterday to see if there was some easy alternatives to that. One of the big problems is that you can't be like for the general use case, you can't guarantee that a person who's using Dear ImGui will have font glyphs loaded for Unicode characters. So I can't, for example, use the long dash. I might also consider doing just like a graphical dash, like drawing like a rectangle through the bar, but that's kind of an unimportant detail for me right now. It's something that I think I'll probably leave to Oscar, the guy who's doing Dear ImGui himself. For now, I think this is probably fine. Just do the dash and then type in a number, and then it'll set the value for all of the items you have selected. Now looking at the sprite component inspector, which is the first inspector that we have to create. And that's going to be this method right here. Oops. On sprite inspector. We did simplify the code quite a bit by making this helper implementation of drag-float 4. This is actually like a version of drag-float 4 that supports mixed values. However, even with that, there's still quite a bit of boilerplate. So if we take a look at the whole rest of this function here, we've got declarations for whether each field is mixed. These technically we're not using these yet. We've only got controls for the UVs implemented. But still, we got declaring booleans to track whether the value has changed, float array where we put the actual values that we're going to be editing, and then the this business here where we're basically populating that data, and then we do this whole iteration through all of the entities with sprites just to determine whether the value should be considered mixed. And I think we could probably abstract that a little bit. I think that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for somebody who's wanting to make an inspector for their stuff to have to write all this boilerplate code, especially if I'm explicitly making a helper for it. I think the helper should do all that stuff for you. So I guess the plan for this morning is to make versions of DragFloat2, DragFloat3, and all the rest of that. Implementations that you basically just pass in the values, and then the helper itself directly determines whether those fields should be mixed, and then edits them afterward. API design-wise, that's going to be a little challenging because we don't know how many items we're going to need. So we can't easily do the C-style ImGui call. So I think we may want to dip our toes into C++ re-implementations for these ones, just to make it a little bit easier to pass stuff around, to be using like containers and things. All right. So what do we need? So I guess the idea is that if we pass in, I'll uncomment these things so I stop seeing red. If we pass into the DragFloat4 an array of values to be used as fields, or to be used in each field, that would be like a multi-dimensional array. So you'd have, for every drag float, you would have an array of values, an array of floats that the field represents. It would have to then pass out, and we have it doing this right now via bool pointer. We'd have to have it pass out whether each field has been modified. So that'd be, in the case of DragFloat4, it would be an array of 4 bools. Those are going to be constant, so we can prepare for that. And then whether a given UV is changed. The way that we have it going right now is that we have it passing out a boolean representing each field of the DragFloat4. And then we use that to elect to update the input values. And I think I want to flip that on its head. I think I want this to be in one line, we pass in the block of memory, and then it will automatically update the values as necessary. Yeah, so there's no getting around the fact that game systems are going to need to be able to create their own lists of data that is going to be supplied to this helper function, because they manage their own memory. A game system might use object pools, it might use linked lists, it might use any memory management system it wants to arrange the data that we're going to be manipulating in the editor. So it does ultimately fall to the game designer or the game developer to take the data from their game system and then format it in a way that's useful. There's two ways we could do that. The first would be if we do, if the developer constructs an array, so basically just like copied into contiguous memory. This would be like the SE style way. So like whatever structure we have for the components in the system, we take and we copy out the values we want to be represented by a field of drag float for, and then we pass in the pointer to that array. This would also require us to like pass in the length, so maybe passing in an STD vector would be something. Alternatively, we could do a system where developer passes in pointers or references to values. And this would have the benefit of not requiring you to do this code to copy the memory back into your data structures, because you're just telling it where all the values are found, and the inspector will directly assign the values back to where they need to be. I think I kind of like this one a bit better, but the API might be kind of clunky if we do it that way. Because you're talking about, well, first of all, probably references. I don't think there's an easy way to do that, because you're talking about dynamically allocating a list of references, and that's not really a thing. You would really need to do this with pointers. So basically you would say, and I'll do some mock code real quick. You'd be doing like mixable drag float for. You would take in the name. You would pass in a structure containing all of the pointers. So it'd be like an STD vector of all of the addresses. So when we go to do the preparation for this, we would still have to kind of iterate through all of the components and get the addresses of all the data that we need to change. So I guess in that sense, the code would kind of look similar to this, except for instead of doing all this is mixed stuff, we would simply be doing like an STD vector of void pointer, or I suppose it would be float pointer. And so it'd be like UV vals, right? Or val pointers. And then as you go through all of the entities, you would basically just populate the val pointers dot pushback current sprite dot UV bounds 0, like that, or you get what I'm saying. So basically you would pass in the address of every single value you need to change into, what's wrong with you? Bounce, pushback, arguments are const float. Oh, because this is a const. Yeah, we would have to make that non-const. But basically you would go through and iterate through everything, populate this structure of pointers. You pass those pointers into the mixable float, UV val pointers. And then at that point you don't even care about is UV mix or is UV changed, because you don't have to do the follow-up code of setting the values back to your entities. It would just directly assign the new values. And because on inspector GUI, which is the call that sets up the inspectors in the first place, because that's done in between frames of the game, you don't have to worry about the memory changing on you between when you get the pointers and when you call mixable drag float. Actually, I really like that. I think that's pretty dang elegant. Yeah, so let's do that. Let's go ahead and just get it started. So I'm going to start with, you can get rid of the mem copy. I'm going to start with, we don't need to compare against the first sprite anymore either. A lot of this gets really simplified by this design. So for starters, we don't need to track whether a value is mixed. We don't need a copy of the values, and we don't need a Boolean to tell us whether a value has changed by way of the inspector. We do need to get all of the entities that have sprites, so this makes sense. We have a vector of entity ID, entities with sprites, and then we simply check to see whether the entity in selected entities has a sprite component on it, and then we push back. Remembering that by the time this function is called, we have a guarantee that at least one of the selected entities has a sprite component on it. Okay. So I guess we can just say, I'll start commenting this to keep it straight in my head. So at this point, we're just getting sprite components. We're getting sprite, getting entities. Let's just say getting sprites. How about that? Getting sprites, and then at this point, we are getting addresses of values to pass to UV fields. Okay, so this is going to be a vector of float UV val pointers. So there would be one of these for each field in drag float 4. So I would say uval pointers top, and then, or actually I think it's ordered bottom, top, left, right. Whoops. I think. I'll have to double check that. UV bounds. Yeah, left, right, bottom, top, actually. So just to keep the ordering a little bit consistent. Cool. And we don't know. Well, I guess at this point we do already know how many entities with sprites there are. So what we would do is we would want these to be pre-allocated to be the size of entities with sprites. So I guess what I'll do is I'll immediately after creating each of these, I will do this, reserve. This would be entities with sprites dot size, like that. Cool. So do this separately. So we've immediately got enough size, so we don't have to reallocate. You don't need those left, right, bottom, top because you know there are. No, they are there. They're just plus their offset. By the way, hi, what's up? Good morning or afternoon. The reason why I'm splitting this off is because in the drag float 4 API that I'm designing, we're going to be passing in up to four float values in separate fields. Middle of the night? Oh gosh. Hopefully not too middle of the night. But yeah, the idea is that this is going to be an abstract for anything that you might have 4 fields for. So I'm going to need to split them up for the sake of the API, for a general API. But yeah, you're right. If this was just, if I was only doing code for UVs, then yeah, I could automatically already just directly get their memory addresses. Oh wait, maybe I misunderstood you. Let me think about this. Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. When we go to populate, we can make a single vector that's 4 times the length of entities with sprites, and then make the first quarter be the left, the second quarter be right, bottom, top, and then I can just pass in those pointers. Well, that would be doing it the C way. I'm going to go ahead and just utilize vectors, because while in this case the drag floats for element 1, field 1, 2, 3, and 4, while in this case they all have the same number of elements that they're changing, that might not be true in every situation that you might use a drag float for. Admittedly, I can't think of a good situation off the top of my head, but the idea is that maybe you'd want to have the first aspect of, or the first field of the drag float for be an element that has more or less elements than the second. It just happens to be in this case that there is a left, right, bottom, and top for everything that has a UV, if that makes sense. So I'm still going to split this up with separate objects, but yeah, that's good thinking. At least it's good to think through these things. Okay, anyway, so we've got the pointers with enough memory for them, and then we're going to go through every entity with sprites, get the current sprite, and we have to do it this way because we're using an object pool. And then with the current sprite, we would say UV-val pointers left dot push back the address of the first float. So this is left, right, bottom, top. And then we would do the same thing for the others. Okay, cool. And this is literally all the setup needed. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. But yeah, for the sake of the API, we're going to do them as separate fields. But yeah, there we go. This is much simpler setup code than what we had before. I think this is something that we can reasonably ask a game developer to do anytime they want to do a complex mixed field. And by complex, I just mean that it has more than one field. Cool. And then we would need to pass in each one of these. Cool. And then this would be it. Yeah, that's real simple, actually. So I think I like this API quite a lot. We are going into C++ land with it because we're accepting vectors as parameters. But I think that this would allow us to shift the burden of the boilerplate code into my implementation and make it a lot easier for game developers to use. All right. So let's take a look at the ImGui helpers, which this might not be a great name. I'm going to let me think about this. I think I am good with ImGui, though it might be a little more on brand to use the editor namespace, because that's where we're going to be putting all of the other editor things. How about editor ImGui or editor? Because if you use ImGui as a namespace, it implies that you're using Dear ImGui. I'll stick with ImGui for now. But yeah, for where we actually have to look for this stuff, what I was doing before is I was having a include editor or include enterprise editor and then the editor headers. GUI input is actually not technically necessary anymore, but I'll come back to that later. It's not really important right now. Instead of ImGui helpers, what would look best for a situation like this? So for starters, if you're working on a game project, you're going to be using these angle braces. I just have them in quotes because this is technically living in the engine source code. So let's say that you're developing a game system and you want to do an inspector. What would you include? It would make sense to do enterprise/editor and then / inspector maybe, or maybe GUI. Or maybe ImGui. Because I think I like this a lot, because it gives you a clear expectation that I'm bringing in the enterprise ImGui stuff. And it's short and terse. And it has name alignment with the namespace that its functions have. I think I like that. I'm going to use that. The where's the source file? Editor, ImGui helpers. Wait. So what brings you up at this late hour? What's up? Hey, hang on. Are you always up in the middle of the night when you watch my stream? Has this been a thing? Have you been watching me when you should be sleeping? I'm moving my mic a little bit. There we go. And then I'll replace the inclusions and the CMake lists for those file names. Yeah, halfway across the world. Oh man. Yeah, I've been kind of working within business hours in the US. And so I don't think I've been getting a lot of folks who live in the US. I used to get more when I worked in the afternoons, but I feel like I'm sharper in the morning than I am in the evening, so I prefer to do it in the mornings. Okay. Cool. So now we've got something. Now the way that I did the implementation before is I basically just copied and pasted the implementation of drag scalar in from Dear ImGui, and then I implemented the mixed flag stuff. I think I'm gonna stick with this style where I've got a general implementation function and then I basically have glorified wrappers for it for each kind of float drag. So how do I generalize this? We need a constant car label, data type, pdata. So these are the things that differ. Previously, I was accepting pointers to Boolean arrays to first identify which fields are mixed and then report out which values are changed. However, I'm now going to do a structure where I receive, for every field, I receive, let me think about this. Yeah, for every field inside of the drag scalar, so I need n number of these. I need to have a block of addresses of values to change. So I guess I could make this still a pdata. And then somehow get those values in a contiguous block of memory before I pass it. There aren't many C++ streams at daytime for me. Twitch software and game dev, mostly Europe, US, and Russia. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's it's a very, very Western, very United States and UK. Well, but let's be real, mostly US and Canada based thing. A lot of the game dev happens in the US and in Canada, though Nordic countries are starting to become a lot more. They're starting to produce a lot more games and have more popular AAA studios and indie studios than they used to, which is pretty nice. Which reminds me that I've got to actually finish The Witcher 3 at some point. I've played through the first 2 games, which is frankly speaking kind of hard because the first Witcher game is rough. It was even for its time, it was not a very well-made game, though it had, a cool story and cool characters and concept, and it was kind of fun. It was just like not AAA compared to the other games coming out at that time. But The Witcher 2 and The Witcher 3, were a lot more popular. And The Witcher 3 is the one that everybody played, and I said, no, I gotta play the first 2 first, and then I'll play the third one. And I've finally done that. And then I just kind of stopped and haven't really gotten into The Witcher 3 yet. I don't know, I'll get there. But yeah, anyway, so previously I would just accept a pointer to the data, and that would represent n number of values. Now I'm accepting all of the values that the multi-selection may represent. So one way to do this is I might accept a vector of vectors. So a vector of floating point. And that would mean that I could have an arbitrarily sized number of values come in. Oh, but it wouldn't be float pointer, it would be void pointer, because this is a generic call. Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way to do this. We're veering completely out of C API stuff now, and we're doing very C++-y style things. So we'll include vector, And then p data, instead of being a void pointer, is now an std vector of std vector of void star. Probably not a very pretty thing, but it's the simplest way I can imagine doing this. Because I would be passing in to all of the helper functions. I'll be passing in separate vectors. I could, in the wrapper, simply put them into braces and then aggregate initialize p data. But yeah, doing it this way, we actually don't even need components anymore because we can just get p data.size. V speed is still important. Pmin, Pmax, yeah, that's still important. I'm still trying to read the Witcher books and watch the second season of the TV show. Ever play the game series? Probably someday. Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to get around to reading the Witcher books, to be honest, because I'm not a book reader. I do read books sometimes. I'm right now going through a book series that a friend of mine gave me for my birthday, which is the Brandon Sanderson books. He's got this big old fantasy trilogy that's kind of popular. That my friends really like. But yeah, probably just won't ever get around to it. The first season of the TV show, man, that was dope. I did see the second season of the TV show, and I won't spoil it for you, but I'm going to say that it wasn't as good as the first season. It kind of felt like they were treading water a little bit. Which is weird to say about a TV show that's based off of the series of books, because you would think that they could just go straight to the story content. Okay. Yeah, so this is looking a little bit better. We got the label, the data type, which is needed for casting the void pointers into the regular ImGui call. VSpeed, Pmin, Pmax, format, that's the format string, and then the slider flags. So this is actually a better looking API. I'm going to copy and paste that into the start here, so that way, or in the header, so that way the declaration matches the definition. And I'm gonna rename it too. I'm going to say we'll do mixed drag scalar n. Yeah, that's fair. That's good. And apparently that was a controversial change, so I'm gonna have to confirm my choices. Okay, good. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, I hit discard. Damn it. There we go. Apply. Cool. And then Alt-Shift F to get me formatting looking better. All right, cool. So now we have mixed drag scalar n. And let's go through this one at a time. We no longer have to use components. We can use pdata.size. And then with p value is mixed, what we were doing before is we would optionally push the mixed flag for a particular element based on the bools that we passed in as an input. However, we no longer need to, well, we no longer can do that. We need to actually go through the values ourselves. We have to actually go through the p data and do a comparison to see if there's a change, if there's a discrepancy between the values and the values that these point to. So, where should we do that? Where's our first use of the data type? Well, that's interesting. We don't even... Do we just pass the data type in? Oh no, here we go. ImGui, data type get info, data type size. And then what is type size used for? It's used for getting... Is this inside of the loop? Yeah. So it's used for getting the pointer to the next element of data. All right, so that's gonna have to change. Okay. All right. So before we do any of this ImGui stuff, we'll leave the early out up here where ImGui has a thing where it checks skip items, set when all items are clipped, and then just immediately returns false. And then underneath that, we will iterate through pdata and do the comparisons. So that means we need to get the type size, so I'll bring that up here, because we'll need to do a mem compare using this number of bytes. We're not even going to cast from a void pointer, we're just going to do a memory comparison. Yeah, and then we'll need to do a for loop. So we'll go through well, I guess we would start by iterating through each of the fields in the mixed field. But that's actually what we're doing down here. So maybe I should just utilize the existing loop. Let me look at that. Yeah. So we would go through each field, and then we need to determine whether that field is mixed. And we'll store it in a field called bool is mixed. That will be what we use for this logic down below. So instead of using the p is mixed at I just use the local scope is mixed boolean. And then we will set that to be true, or no, sorry, set it to false by default. No, true by default, because if it's mixed, then we. Hang on a second. No, false by default. And then as soon as we encounter a second element in the vector that differs from the first, or from as soon as we find an element that differs from the first, then we will mark it as mixed and then treat it as a mixed field. Otherwise, it'll just display the number and it'll set all the numbers directly. Cool. All right, getting somewhere. We're also going to need the value, I think. Do we? Ultimately, these go into calls to drag scalar where we pass in a pointer to the value that it represents. Yeah, so we're going to need to allocate that, which is going to suck. So we don't know what type that we're going to be allocating for, so this has to be a void pointer. And this is going to be val. And it's going to be... Ooh, hang on. I can declare this out here. So we'll do field value. and that's going to be equal to a new. Actually, I would have to literally use alloc. I can't use new because I don't know the type. So I guess I'm going to have to say malloc, then we're going to do type size. Cool. And then what we can do with this, let me go down and delete it at some point, or free it. I'll do that down here. That'd be field value. What we can do with this block, field value, is we can we would mem copy in the first value, and then we would do a mem compare against each subsequent value. Okay, I think I'm starting to make sense of this. This is a little bit complicated. I'm resisting the urge to completely refactor this code because I don't really like the way that the ImGui codebase is stylized. And this is still technically copied it in from ImGui, but I'll resist that urge for the moment. Okay, begin group, push ID, label. Yeah, so we'll have to do, first want to do a mem copy of the first value in, yeah. So inside of the loop, we're going through each one of the fields, because this will have n number of fields. We'll do a mem copy. We're copying into field value. We're copying from p data at I dot front. It's occurring to me now we might need to have an assertion that this is called, that every single one of the p datas has at least one value in it. Yeah, that should be done in here. So I'm gonna do an EP assert. Put this down here. EP assert pdata dot size. Just making sure that that it's a non-zero size. I think it's in C++20 that we get empty. Oh no, we do have empty. Double checking. Yeah, we have empty now. Okay, cool. That's C++17, I guess. Or no, it's I don't know why I thought that was not included in here. I must be thinking of a different SD struct. But we need to bring in insertions in order to do that. So we'll include enterprise core assertions. Cool. And then this is going to be probably a slow assertion as well, because the yeah, we want this one to only run in debug because we're going to be doing this call a lot during the editor. I think it would be better to have a fixed stack buffer for field value because it won't be too big practically. Why? I mean, this is only a single value. This doesn't represent the block of data we're bringing in. This represents just what is going to be in the one field. It's not a buffer, it's just a variable. We need to pass in type, size. Now, maybe I'll have to Google that term and make sure that I'm on. Oh, I misunderstood you. Hang on a second. Fixed stack buffer. Oh, okay, yeah. So not using allocate or anything, but just yeah, that's probably smart. I wonder if ImGui actually has any limits on this, because they enumerate the types that they support. Let me look for that. Because I could actually probably tell, given that this is a wrapper for ImGui, I could probably tell what literally the largest size of data would be. Yeah, 64 would probably be enough, but I don't have to guess. I can go straight to... Where's the... Do I have to... Okay, here we go. So these are the data types that we can pass in. We got signed date, uint, float double count. Yeah, so it looks like the widest width is 64. So yeah, that's a good call. Look at you, you're so smart. And you're doing this in the middle of the night too. That's props. But yeah, that's correct. So yeah, we're guaranteed that the width is going to be 64 or less. So we'll just do that. That'd be like this. Yeah. And then down below we can get rid of the free. Yeah, there we go. Cool. And then the field value, we would copy in the type size. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. And then while we're determining whether we're mixed, we're going to treat the field value as the first value. So what we'll do is we'll do it for every const void star val pointer, or val pointer in p data dot p data at I. See if I remembered if I got that structure correct. Right, because this is the pointer to the vector of pointers, index aligned to the field number, right? So for every val pointer, we'll say is mixed equals, or we'll say or equals val pointer I'm having a little bit of brain fog right now. We have to do a mem compare. Mem comp, that's the one. And we're comparing the field value and the val pointer of size type size. Okay. And then at this point we'll say if is mixed, we'll break. I just think a lot about allocation, almost to being temperamental. I don't remember how many times I've tried to write a pull allocator. Yeah. It's good to know these things, because this is totally the smartest way to handle this, and I just wasn't thinking of it. So it's good to be well versed in that stuff. Cool. And I have a early out here if there's like 100 items or whatever, and then we identify that the second one differs, and we don't have to iterate through the rest of them. I am Plody. Custom allocator, nice, but you should also focus on features, not optimizing without profiling. That's true. Yeah, it's good to practice that stuff, but you don't want to be spending all your time on it. Anyway, so now at this point we know whether the field is mixed. We've got a populated field value to pass into ImGui. Welcome in, Emplody. I think this is the first time I've seen you in here. How are you doing today? Cool. We'll do if is mixed, we'll push the item flag mixed values, so that way ImGui will do the proper handling with mixed values. Out value has changed is no longer a thing. I don't think we actually need this value. I can just get rid of that assignment, just do the thing. I'm doing all right. I'm getting back into the flow of streaming. Last week I kind of had to take an early week because I don't know, I came down with something or something. I was like having a lot of brain fog, and then I wound up, after I got off stream, I wound up having a migraine that lasted for several days. But I'm doing a lot better now. Okay, and then we can just do the drag scalar. Instead of passing in p data, we pass in field value. Field value. And then all the rest of the other stuff can be passed in. Come on, IntelliSense. All the rest of it can be passed in from the forwarded arguments. Okay. And then if I'm remembering correctly, the p data is actually directly assigned. Not to double check. I haven't been using ImGui long enough to know off the top of my head how this works. P data. Yeah, so p data is directly set. So at this point, field value has the new value. We don't need the value changed anymore. Or do we? Hang on. Because down below, yeah, we actually will need this in here. We're not passing out value as changed, but value changed, bool value changed, that's needed for the return value. We'll also need that ourselves to determine whether to reassign all the values that we pass pointers to. Yeah, okay, so it'll work more like this. Because we're not dealing with an out value anymore, but we still need it internally. All right. That's looking good. And then we pop the ID, pop item width, and then the previous way that the ImGui code worked was by moving to moving to the next field by literally doing pointer arithmetic. We don't have to do that here because we're not using p data as a raw pointer. In fact, I probably should give that a better name now. But we are iterating through pdata.size and then accessing pdata at I, so that's better. Yeah, the talking about like people's experience levels with coding. Sometimes I forget when I'm reading on Reddit or someplace. Sometimes I forget that there's a whole bunch of young people who are posting questions and things. I might want to make it a rule in my own chats to say, don't assume experience levels, because there's like no dumb questions. Because sometimes folks on the internet, they'll say, oh, that's stupid, why are you doing it like that? And then they'll use the word stupid and then maybe accidentally insult somebody who's just like a 13-year-old kid who's trying to learn how to do something. I'm not saying that's the case here, but it's something that I've been thinking about recently. That everybody online kind of assumes that the people that they're talking to are roughly the same age as them. Where are we at? Yeah, so I think this is actually probably good. So at this point, after the group has ended, we have displayed a mixed value, and we have received a value changed flag, and we have a new value assigned to field value if it was changed. So what we can do is we can say before we return, dumb questions exist though, like I'm trying to do X, explains, doesn't work, can anyone help? Yeah, that's true. I mean, like, it's sure that is a dumb question, but when it's asked by a child, right? I mean, that's the difference. So maybe I shouldn't phrase it like there are no dumb questions. But I don't know. I'll have to think a little bit more about how I want to word that. When people want you to fix their bugs with and without error messages, yeah, I am in that camp where I do get really frustrated when I'm like looking on Stack Overflow or looking on RCPP questions, and then people just post like not nearly enough information to actually get help, or they put zero effort into asking the question. Yeah, that's not cool. But yeah, so I think we're nearly done here. So now we do if value changed. Then what we need to do in this block is we need to assign field value to all the values pointed to in pdata. Yeah, so I guess we'll just iterate through pdata. Oh, but that's not. This is not a good place to do that because field value is going to change for every field. So I actually have to do this code here. Yeah. Let me continue with my comments. Okay, and then we'll do set value back. Oh. except for, okay, yeah, so I think I'm getting a little bit wiser to how this should all fit together. I actually do need to separately track whether each field has changed. Because in here, I need to know whether the field has changed to know whether to set the values back to the values passed in as pointers. However, I need to know whether any given one of the values have changed to return true or false on this function. So yeah, value changed. I'm going to need to do an assignment down here for something like field changed at I, like that. And then I'll declare this up above, but I'll say, actually, you know what? I don't even need to do this as an array. I can just do field changed and make that a local. Bam. And then up here, I'll do bool field changed equals false. But does this loop structure make sense? Hang on a minute. Yeah, this doesn't need to be or equals. This is just the assignment. Cool. Push ID I. Display the field. We track whether this particular field has changed, and then we do an or equals on value changed. So at the very end, we know whether any given value has changed. And right, because that's false, false. Good. All right, and then in this section down here, we'll say set value back to original, or set values back if changed. And then we'll do if field changed. We'll do for every, that'd be every, yeah, every void pointer, val pointer in P, what was it? P data? I think it's P data. Ah. Come on, IntelliSense. There you go. For every pointer at P data at I believe it was. Because that's a vector of a vector. So dereference to the field, and then we will get every pointer inside of that vector. We will do mem copy from, we'll do that to val pointer from, that would be field data. The size of type size, I think is what the value is called. Wow, IntelliSense is really slow right now. Let me restart IntelliSense. All right. Cool. And I think that's literally it. We just copy the value out from field data to the val pointer for every one inside of the vector representing this field's data. Cool. This actually is not very complicated code, and I'm happy about that. Cool. And now, because we don't, because we're dealing with pointers to values instead of, you know, passing in blocks of booleans and whatever as in and out values, a person using mixed drag scalar n, or the wrappers for it, they don't have to even consider whether a given field was changed, because it'll automatically be updated by this function. So nice, sweet. Got a little red squiggle down here. Is field data misspelled? Or field value is what it was. Field value is what it was. Wow, it took like IntelliSense 3 years to identify that there was a typo in there. Whatever. Come on, will you resolve the red squiggle already? Thank you. All right. Looks like this file is good. Let's go back to the header, and we'll do the wrapper implementations for drag float 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. So these are going to look a little different. We are no longer doing this. We are taking in vectors of float pointers now. So instead of doing this, we'll do like that. Oops. And this one will be, I guess it'll be field 1 and 2. Label, field 1, field 2. I'm not a huge fan of this whole underscored thing. I prefer Pascal case, but I'm keeping it in the style of ImGui. Label, field 1, field 2. Good. Okay. And then these will be put into a vector of void pointers that gets passed in to mixed drag scalar n. Yeah, okay. And then here, instead of passing in that, we'll say, we'll do aggregate initialization. At least I think that's what it's called. And construct a vector of float pointer. Oh, except for that's not going to work, is it? Because these are vectors of float pointers. So I want it to be type checked when I'm using drag float 2. But that means that I'm going to have to do casting here. I'll worry about that in a second. This is, I think the rest of it's okay. These, yeah, literally everything else is just forwarded from the arguments above. So what's the most elegant way to construct an R value of vector void? I used to use snake case, turns out things get pretty lengthy. Yeah, I can see the appeal of snake case, but it encourages a few bad things in my opinion. Because snake case is great because it looks like a sentence when you look at it. Because the underscores look like spaces. It's like field space 2 space values, and then you can read that. Like this is literally just as readable. It spaced exactly as a sentence would be. But it also kind of like encourages folks to do like crazy long things because their variable names kind of look like sentences to begin with. I prefer the Pascal case where you keep things tight and the very nature of squishing all the words together kind of like psychologically makes you think that it's a problem if it's too wide, and that's why I like it. I use Pascal case on big things, and then for like private member variables, I'll use camel case, the other one. But what's the most elegant way for me to do this? I don't want to. It might be a little bit weird if I do this for both. Oh wait, these are, well, that's fine. What's the problem here? No Sidwell user defined conversion. Oh, is there even a way for me to do this? For me to, I mean, if this was C++20, I could use spans instead of void pointers, but I'm in C++17. Google, here we come. Make your own span implementation. Yeah, the trouble is that I'm not doing enough. Yeah, they're very helpful. But I'm not doing enough low level stuff like this right now. Like this is like I've got I've been doing this engine for a while now, and it's pretty sizable. And this is the first time I've needed to use spans. But yeah, I agree, they're super useful. Oh, that's so ugly. STD transform. I've never used transform before. Don't you want to pass those by reference? What are we talking about? The floats? I need to be able to iterate through the values directly, and you can't have a vector of references. Like I need to be able to take and pass around. Yeah, you're talking about these. Yeah, the reason why we're doing pointers is to be able to directly assign the values, but you can't do this, I don't think. Can you? Because references are they're not actually data. Can you do that? It's not giving me squiggles, but it could just be that IntelliSense is super slow. Yeah, so you can't do a pointer to, you can't do a vector of references because it's not assignable. I don't know why IntelliSense isn't screaming at me for doing this, but it's not. These you can't pass around references like that. You can't. They're not assignable. They're not copyable. They're references. They're just basically syntactic sugar around accessing the memory directly. So yeah, these have to be pointers if I'm going to be passing them. And I'm using pointers because I want to be able to set the values directly instead of having to have more boilerplate after a call to one of these functions. But yeah, I'm this close to actually just doing an STD span implementation for myself. And then using that instead of the C-style void pointer. But yeah, STD transform, what's that about? STD transform applies the given function to a range and stores the result in another range. It's still a copy instead of a cast. Is there a constructor that'll help me here? You know what, whatever. I'm not gonna fuss over this so much. I'm just gonna do a construction of. Hang on a second. Go the undefined behavior route and use a union. Yeah. Yeah, I could, but let's not. So what we'll do is we'll do std vector of std. I don't need to do the. I can probably get away with implicit template parameters, and we'll do field 1 values. We will pass in dot begin, and then field 1 values dot end. I just want to get this working. And then we will have another vector for field 2 values, and then put those all in braces. Will that work? Oh, I have to do the type. I do have to do the type. That's the whole point of this. Okay, so that'll work. Not great, but whatever. I'll just do this until it's working the way I want it to. What's up with speed? Mixed drag scalar n. I've got my parameters in the wrong order, I think. P data, we got V speed. It immediately, oh right, we don't need count anymore. I forgot about that. Because we can just get the size of this vector. Are you done complaining at me in IntelliSense? All right, cool. So this is the current way to do it for now. And this is in the editor, so I guess I don't really care a huge amount about performance, but I'll wait until it's actually a performance problem before I start optimizing it. Cool. We will replace these. I will do another line, and we're doing 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Cool. And then do this again for 4. Down here. Like that. And then, oops. And then we'll do field 4 values. Field 4 values. Oh, but I gotta change these signatures. So let's do that. Okay, I think this is looking pretty good. As long as the squiggles go away. Meanwhile, I have to do a custom GUI. Yeah. I really didn't want to use ImGui, but it wound up just being impractical for me to spend all the time doing my own GUI library. Okay, I think this is working. If we go back into the sprite inspector code, mixable drag float 4 should now be doing something. Okay, we know that it exists. Did I not rename it? Oh, I didn't rename it. What's the custom GUI that you're doing, Implody? Oh, I said mixable. Yeah, let me mixed like that. Okay, that seems to be working. So now this is the code for the inspector for the sprite components. We're just getting the entities that have sprites in them. We are getting the addresses to pass into the mixed dragflow4, and then we just pass them, and then the dragflow4 will automatically assign the values if they change. Retained mode. Immediate doesn't work nicely in multiple threads. No, it doesn't. You have to synchronize all that shit. Okay, everything compiled. Let's see if everything worked. We'll open up a scene. Got the scene open. We'll select. Oh, we got an insertion. What do we got? P-data at I is. It's not empty. Oh, whoops. I meant to say to assert that it's not empty. Alright. Open up a scene file. Bam. Select a couple sprites. Right now they all look correct. I can change the UVs for all of them at once. Once I've done that, let's add one that we haven't edited, and we see that we have a mixed value. And now, okay. So, all right, so this seems to be doing exactly what we want. And now we have a way simpler API for developers to use. There's no, because game systems can manage their memory however they want, there's no getting around having a little boilerplate to pass in values in the correct format to a mixed drag flow. But now we've just reduced that to simply getting addresses for them and then passing them in. And that's, that's pretty elegant. It's pretty slick. So now you can have an inspector that automatically takes all of the values, checks to see whether they're mixed values or not, and then between those mixed values, I have to hold down Alt-1 dragging on these because otherwise they'll go way too big. It'll automatically put in a dash if they're mixed, it'll display the value if they're not mixed, and if you click and drag on a mixed value, it'll automatically update, and you can also type the values. Cool. All right, this is looking pretty nice. Let's go back to ImGui.h, and I want to add the remaining overloads for these. My engine, well, rather a framework / API, has a weird combination of target genres. What's this weird combination? I'm a big fan of weird things. Okay, here we go. So I got drag float 1 through 4 I have overloads for. I also want to do these others, drag int 1 through 4. What's up with the range? What does drag float range do? let's take a look at that in the demo. Range widgets. Widgets. Range widgets. Range float. Oh, okay, so it's like a min and max thing going on. Okay, so this is a field selection where you can specify a given range. So literally you're defining the lower and upper bounds of the range. Okay, that makes sense. That doesn't really fall into what I'm working on right now, so I'll hold off on it. But I will do the integers. Okay, so we got int 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't think there's any reason for me to do a re-implementation of drag scalar, because literally it's just the same thing. It'll automatically set the value to the new value when you use it. The only difference being that drag scalar, I'll do a wrapper for drag scalar. So that way you can use drag mixed scalar, and then you don't have to bother setting the mixed value flags yourself. Okay. Let me copy all those signatures. Okay. Good. Oops. But yeah, Implodey, feel free to show off on your engine. I really dig when people do custom low-level game stuff. We've also got a Discord now. That's a pretty brand new thing. I was peer pressured into doing a Discord, so you can click the link to join and then share your stuff. Hey, Person Med, how are you doing? We have just dramatically simplified mixed fields for custom inspectors. Basically, like one line does all the boilerplate except for getting the things that are in the mixed field. Oops. Nice, I'm glad. Oh, I don't need to do... I can make these inline. Because they're just wrappers for the other. Did an evil thing in your code. What monstrosity have you unleashed upon your code base? This one up to the top. Like that. we've got mixed drag scalar, n, mixed drag float, all that. All right, so inside of these, we basically just need to wrap mixed drag scalar n. I'll use these as a base. Comparing a const character pointer to a string literal, relying on the compiler to perform. Why? Was this an accident that you immediately corrected? Or did you just want to do it? Yeah? I'm actually not very clear on what string pooling is either. But my impression, based on how you phrased it, is that it's undefined behavior. But string pool is an object that can be repeatedly inserted. Is a string pool literally just a string that you keep appending to? Is that all it is? String pooling is the action by the compiler to pool identical strings into one. Oh, to put them in the same memory? I guess I don't really see the point. If you're talking about just like compiler optimizations, because of const car. So you mean like dynamically creating a const car that is string pooled and then comparing that to a string? I don't really. Because all you need to do that is just to have, you know, a string allocated somewhere. You don't even have to make it a const car, you can just make a string that is your string pool. Okay, the string literal would be, like depending on your optimization settings, string literals is in read-only memory anyway. Yeah, I don't think I'm following. But what problem were you trying to solve? Like, what were you doing all this for? I could probably do an implementation of mixed drag float as well, now that I'm looking at this. I have streamer mode on for Discord, so if you were pasted in there, let me know so that I can look at it. ImGui.h. I had skipped over drag float before, thinking that, oh, you can just do the, if you're doing a single value, that you can just do the wrapper yourself. You would do the the push item flag and then pop item flag when you're done. But I think I'm gonna do an implementation of my own, like this. What does its implementation look like? Yeah, it's just a return on drag scalar. Okay. So we'll do drag scalar first, and then we'll do the individuals. So instead of doing a pointer to p data, we'll do the vector of void pointer. Whoops. Okay, and then we'll just use a single vector of pointers to values to do the comparison and change. Okay, let's do an implementation of this in the other. Oh, I didn't export this. I need to. EP API. Good. All right. And in .cpp above mixed drag scalar n, we'll do this guy. It'll actually be a lot more straightforward than the other implementation we did. Hey Goku, welcome in. Const car star x equals abc, const star v equals abc, v equals x. Yeah, that's my impression of what it is doing, is that it's using the same block of memory to represent the same string, and your compiler may do that automatically when you use the same string literal in multiple places to optimize constant read-only string memory. But it also might inline in some places certain things. I'm not really an expert on optimizations, but I guess what Person Med is talking about is doing something at runtime instead of just letting the compiler deal with it. I don't know. We'll see what his paste bin looks like when he gets it pasted. Okay. So in this one, we basically just need to do a check to see whether this should be a mixed field. And if it is, then we'll push the flags and call the regular drag scalar. And if it's not, we just call the regular drag scalar. So. Okay, we'll need I'll do these as side by side. And then this will be, then give me widgets drag scalar. Okay, it looks like your paste bin came in. Let's take a look at it. I'm pretty curious what you're talking about. Const string equals sample string. If string equals sample string. Yeah, that's probably not great. Like, I don't know, if you have strict control over the platform that you're going to be running your code on and your compiler, then you could maybe get away with a hack like this to compare the address stored in string and the address of a literal string literal. But I mean, that's wild. That's wildly unsafe. There's better ways to optimize string comparisons. Yeah, was this an optimization thing, or were you just playing around? It just works with a TM in there. I almost didn't see the TM because it's dark lettering against my dark. Yeah, it just works TM. Yeah, don't do that. Probably not a great thing to start doing. All it would take would be, some update to your compiler, and then all of a sudden that code breaks. Okay, yeah. So we'll need to know the size of the type, which we get using ImGui data type get info. Just copy and paste this up here. And then we'll need the field value, like we were doing before. Hey, what? I was thinking, hey, string pooling will make all references to that string use the same pointer. If I was just to compare a side pointer, it's a great way to see what string is allocated or selected from a known list of literals, as this does not deal with user input and would make, yeah, like the way that your pastebin is implementing it probably is unsafe. You could imagine a scenario where you could come up with a speed up like that, but I mean, you shouldn't. Especially where user input is concerned. You can't, like, well, because you can't, if your compiler doesn't set up the string pooling the way that you expect, if there are two copies for some reason, then all of a sudden your string comparison fails even though they're identical strings. You should always correctly compare the strings. That's a problem when it comes to problem. Yeah, it's just writing unsafe code though, and that's why it's called unsafe. Is because it can work, but you can't guarantee that it will always work, and a problem may arise from the use of that code. So I would stick to string comparisons, and then if you want to optimize and not deal with a full string comparison, do something like hashing, and then compare the hashes. It does UI stuff, so I'd surely notice if the compiler bugs out. Yeah. Yeah, or what's up saying if something inline static or DLL may cause a problem, because those are all situations where the memory might not be the same address in read-only memory. Oh yeah, the games you want to make are strategy games and building games. The tech I want to create is for open world RPGs. So like an open world strategy building game. I mean, that's not crazy. I mean, technically, like, Civilization is open world, right? Because it's got a map that you have to explore. but quite general purpose backend, yeah. Yeah, reflection is not a universally useful tool. What's up? It's useful for general purpose game editors like the one I'm making, but well, not an open world strategy game, more like I want to create tech that's wildly different from what I need for the games that we want to create. Yeah, I guess so. Open world stuff is complicated. I don't know if or when I'll get into open world stuff myself in my own game engine, but it's something that I've been thinking about as I design my APIs. Open world RPGs like Horizon, yeah. Open world stuff is so complicated sometimes. Are you familiar with what they did in Unreal Engine 5 for open world stuff? They have a thing where it's like a single file for every asset. So like every asset that you place in the world has its own file, and so you go to edit its location in the world and you're only updating that one file, and it's supposed to make open world source control a bit nicer, but it does mean you have a gajillion files, one for every entity in the open world. Yeah, well, it's new to UE5, I think. They didn't do that before UE5, but yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, I just want them to get hot code reloading to work. like that's all I want. Because like right now, it's like if you're in C++, being able to just change the code and hop back and forth between the editor, it sucks. You'd better be better off with blueprints. No other free engine had direct open world support. Yeah. Though Unreal is like free with an asterisk, but I get what you're saying. No, I'm getting distracted. Yeah, I need to do a loop. So first thing I gotta do, I got the field value. We're gonna do a mem copy. Mem copy for field value. Oops, that's a underscore. From p data, first element. Actually, yeah, it would just be the first element. And then type size. But also world partition has some issues. Sometimes if you want to partition the world in hexagons, or other shapes in the world partition only allows squares. Yeah. The open world is just... It seems like the only truly good open world editors are the ones that are proprietary for a specific game or franchise. And like all general purpose editors are kind of trying to solve almost a cursed problem, because like the way that a game fits its world together may be different from any other game. Yeah, generalizing that stuff is tough. I'd be really interested to see how yours turns out. Alright, so at this point we've got the type size, we've got the field value is now the first element in pdata, and we can do a loop through pdata. Yeah, I don't even make a predefined editor for your engine. Yeah, that's probably smart. I'm trying to take a similar tack on my engine. Like I am doing everything as a framework for making systems, but yeah, more of a build your own engine kit. Yeah, it's like it's hard to draw that line, because like if you want robust anything, you kind of had to prescribe some things to the game developers using your engine. But yeah, I really dig frameworks that let you go really, really low level. I'm thinking of using LLVM to write a transpiler that will convert from custom C++ extension, maybe custom attribute to generate standard C++ 20 with runtime type information data. Are you talking about like a reflection thing? Like to have like custom attributes that generate information data about your code, about your types and things? Basically, the only things this framework will have is input, windowing, graphics, audio, and threading systems. No ECS or scripting. Yeah, that's pretty bare bones. Yeah, the kind of seems like are you gonna provide other features on top of that are like optional features, so that way you have like a starting point for a lot of stuff. For example, are you gonna provide a renderer? Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Reflection kind of like UE. Yeah, reflection is helpful, but I think it's like you only want to get into it when you're going to use it. Like in my engine so far, I don't have a true use case for it yet, because when you make a game system that has custom components, you can just pass the data that you need it to display to the editor, and then it'll see it. Oh, a render graph. Okay. That's actually a lot more robust than I thought you were gonna say. So you can construct a renderer with like node-based editing. I'm a huge fan of shader graph stuff. You can throw together a whole bunch of really cool stuff really easily and portably without having to get into the weeds with GLSL or HLSL or something. I should probably focus a little bit on this. I have been typing this for a while now. Sorry, we're doing a memory comparison between the value pointer and field value, and the size is going to be type size. Cool. And if it is mixed, break. All right. So at this point, we'll know whether we're mixed or not. I'll also probably make a small framework for creating tools easier. Yeah, it's being able to extend your tools for custom things is a huge perk. It's one of the things that makes Unity so powerful. But for something like a strategy game, I probably want Lua scripting, which you do not want in an open world game. Why would you want Lua scripting in a game like Civ? I'm curious to know your reasoning. easy modding. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see that. Lua scripting is great for extensibility in programs. For OBS, I have a custom script that was really easy to hack together for doing my live countdown. And in Reaper, which is my preferred DAW when I'm doing audio work, I like to use Lua extensions for extending my tools, and you can do an awful lot with it. JBlow convinced me that we don't need a scripting language. Stinky glitch. We just need to ship the whole C++ compiler or force user to build the engine from source. Yeah, Jonathan Blow is kind of a hardliner. Yeah, easy to extend without recompiling, yeah. Yeah, Jonathan Blow is kind of a hardliner. I think that, in general, I think that it is true that people need to take pause before they do something like implement a scripting language, because I think a lot of people think that adding a scripting language to a game or a game engine solves different problems than it really does, or that it's the only solution to solve certain problems. I think a big reason why a lot of amateur game developers want to do scripting languages so much is because it can reload on the fly, but you can just hot reload your C++ code, even though that it requires a bit more forethought when you go to set it up. Yeah, unless you want mod support, I'd argue you don't need scripting. Yeah, and you can even, like, if you make your tools publicly available, if you make your game in a game engine, that supports extensibility, then you could even let modders use C++ without having to do a whole bunch of reverse engineering. You can just say, okay, here's the kit, go to town, and then they can just compile modules that'll plug into their game. Yeah, it requires some forethought, but yes, scripting languages are not like the only way to do a whole bunch of things that people use them for. But yeah, Jonathan Blow, he doesn't like anything being interpreted for any reason whatsoever. Basically, when it comes to games, I suppose he probably is not as much of a hardliner when it comes to applications like OBS or whatever. But in games, yeah, he just wants everything to be compiled and optimized. Force player modder to learn C++, problem solved. Yeah. You just tag yourself, what's up? I do that actually, but I think C++ modding is kind of a security risk as well. Yeah, I guess it depends on, your needs. Any game I make in this engine, I'm probably not worried about security, because I'm probably not going to be doing like online multiplayer games, for example, where people might cheat, or people cheating is a problem. But yeah, if you're doing certain kinds of games, then yeah, you want to give yourself some protection. Imagine downloading DLLs from Steam Workshop. People do that. To be clear, I'm actually working on a mod right now for Black Ops 3 with a small crew, and literally it'll include DLL because it gives us custom extensions that the mod tools just don't give us. But yeah, you can totally totally abuse game modders if you allow DLL extensions. But yeah, it's sort of yeah. There's no one size fits all. it turns out. What are you complaining about? Alright, so what I've done here is I've basically just determined whether it's mixed. If it is mixed, then I'll push the item flag before calling the regular drag scaler. Otherwise, I will just call the regular drag scaler. Bam. Yeah, you have to... Yeah, you're gambling anytime you go to download a mod that has DLLs. It's best if it's just content, because you can do a lot of scary things with DLLs. Thankfully, the worst security concerns are handled by the operating system to begin with. But yeah, that's true. All right. And then we return. Actually, you know what I would do? I can just do return on these. Oh no, I can't because I got to pop the flag. So I'll do bool is changed equals false. And we'll say is changed equals drag scaler. Return is changed. You'd have to, yeah. All right. So I think that works. I'm pretty sure. Let me read through this again. Yeah, so we've got is changed, is mixed. Got the type size. We copy the first value into field value. We go through all the values. We do a memory comparison. I should probably be in or equal. Actually, no, I can just do that as an equal. And then if mix, we'll push the flag and do the thing. And otherwise, we'll just do the drag scaler by itself. All right, cool. I think that works. Let's test it. So let's go to inspector.cpp. I actually have already. A field that's for testing this. Where is it? Test mixed scaler, this guy. I could probably replace all this code with that one call and see if it works. Oh, I forgot to do, hang on. Yeah, I forgot to do a few things. Yeah, free threaded engines are, yeah, it helps to have a main thread. I tend to, like, my philosophy is to like go through the program on one thread until you have a job that needs to be multi-threaded, or that you can multi-thread, and then thread those out and then bring those jobs back in. The one exception to that would be like having an audio or a graphic or a rendering thread where you push jobs to that thread. The thread's only job is to interface and push out stuff to the user. If they support multi-threading, they probably won't be simple enough to be a scripting language. I guess I don't understand what you're saying there. What's up? If they support multi-threading, if a game engine supports multi-threading, I mean, scripting languages, you know, like, you can just imagine that it's working on the thread that it needs to be, and it'd be on the engine developer to make sure that it's running on the right thread. Yeah. I'm a fan of having no main thread. In general, I'm not a fan of systems locked to a single thread as well. Yeah. It's, like, logically, it just makes sense to me for the things to always be in the right order. Like, by using a single thread as, like, the single source of truth for the overall flow of your application, you can eliminate a lot of problems before they start, but it depends. Rendering threads and audio threads and things like that, that can make sense, but, you know, to and from other threads, yeah, sync overhead is kind of, yeah. So far, I'm so far on this engine, I'm literally just doing single-threaded everything, and I'll be doing multi-threaded systems when I get there. Okay. Good. And I must have missed something in here. Well, I probably missed something in the header, now that I'm thinking about it. You haven't actually implemented these guys yet. Render thread makes no sense in modern APIs. You'd solve most problems with a task graph, so your order is guaranteed by the task graph, assuming your task graph is implemented. I'm not familiar with task graphs. I guess I'll have to look that up. I'm not a professional by any means. I am self-taught, and there's a lot of these topics that I straight up am not familiar with. But I mean, I think a render thread is still a very common thing, right? Like, even big game engines like Unreal and Unity have a render thread where you just basically just push out the things that you want to push to your OpenGL or DirectX or whatever, and then you just have that one thread that its only job is to make those calls. Nice, yeah. Yeah, you seem to know your stuff. What have I missed? Unknown type BP API. Oh, yeah, right here. Render threads aren't really good anymore. They're a relic of legacy APIs. Yeah, I haven't really gotten into DirectX very far. Not DirectX 12, certainly. But I've been meaning to get into DX12 and Vulkan and kind of learn how they do it, because from what I understand, like, the organization of the API is a lot more structured to be in line with what actual hardware does. So I've been meaning to get into that. But while I'm just kind of getting things going on this engine, I am straight up just using OpenGL because it's so much simpler to write the code, even if it's less powerful or less structured. Oh, whoops, I got the default args in the CPP file. I mean, like Python, they have GIL making it effectively single thread. JavaScript as well, they only have one data structure to share state between threads, shared array date buffer. The language has proper support for multi-threading. I missed the rest of it before it faded off my screen. A language with proper support for multi-threading has mutex synchronized data, or at least communication channel pass data. Yeah, I mean, don't forget atomics. But yeah. Vulkan is the best API, though currently making my engine D3, D12 exclusive. That's an interesting perspective to take. Why would you pick something to use that is not what you consider the best? Are you just getting practice in with DirectX 12, or are you? Do you have other reasons for using DirectX? Alright, so that compiled at least. Alright, so down at the bottom of the inspector panel, I have this test thing here where I was originally testing mixed scalars, where you can see that it has a mixed value. You can click and drag, and then you can type in numbers and whatever. I'm going to replace that with the new mixed scalar API that I've got going. So inside of inspector.cpp, we've got EPI ImGui, and then other components. Yeah, after all of that, we have this code, which was doing the drag flow. I am now going to get rid of this, all of this boilerplate. We no longer track is mixed by ourselves, we just have float values. Getting through D3D12 practice, but also D3D12 has some features that Vulkan doesn't that makes it nicer in some cases. Yeah, I like things like the DirectX Ocean, maybe. I know that they have like literally like an ocean simulation thing that's DirectX based. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of a lot of the boilerplate that I had before. I'm gonna now do EP ImGui mixed drag flow, right? Or mixed, say mixed drag scalar. Pass in the label, test, mixed drag. And then we pass in the data type. In this case, we'll do ImGui data type float. And then we're passing in a vector of pointers to data. So we'll do float values. There'll be 3 of them. We'll default initialize them. And then we'll say, my rendering is fully bindless. Vulkan bindless is really ugly compared to D3, D12, HLSL bindless. Oh, okay. Huh. I'll have to learn how that works. I know that writing in Vulkan is like really difficult. Like you have to do like a whole bunch of code just to draw a triangle. That your performance benefits really only come after you've done a whole bunch of work. in any situation where you need to control, like if you want to put limits on what a developer can do when they're modding a game, like you can just handle that by presenting errors or warning messages when they fuck up, right? A whole Vulkan abstraction would be only 3,000 line of codes, which isn't that much, honestly. Oh, really? Huh. I'll have to learn it. I'll have to actually do some stuff in Vulkan to understand. The way that I've got this framework going for this game engine for Enterprise, it's developed in such a way where I could presumably slot in another graphics API. However, I anticipate that when I go to look at slotting in Vulkan or DirectX, that I'll probably have to redesign my own API to wrap it, to make it used efficiently. And that's with integrating a shader compiler into that abstraction as well. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's better than I thought. Yeah, but it's like through the grapevine or anecdotally, I've heard folks say that, oh, they have to do, however many thousand lines of code before they even have a triangle on the screen. But maybe that's only for getting started, right? Well, thanks for the follow. I'll have to get a schedule up because I'm starting to make this a regular thing, but I think right now my plan is to stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, do some live coding, and maybe do some games on Saturdays. I've got a friend who's a live game streamer. He mostly just streams gameplay, and I'll give him a quick shout out. But yeah, he's really anxious to, or really interested in doing some collab game streaming stuff on my channel. He's a programmer too, but he doesn't use Twitch for that. I'm just kind of hacking together an example of a mixed field like this. Just for example. Okay. Actually, I'll leave this at these two different values for this test to be worth anything. Okay, so I've got 3 values, passing their addresses in to this guy. I can then return true or false depending on whether it's changed any of the values. But that's not what I care about right now. I would say values equals. Can I just do this? A directed assignment to. Nah, that would have been too much. Are you, have you looked into the C++ 20 coroutines. Oh, I thought when you said Koros, I thought you meant like a library or something. Yeah, I see their value, and I'm gonna have that's something that I'm going to be having to sort out myself for this engine, because coroutines are very useful for game development. But implementing them in an elegant way in C++ before full support is kind of hard. Yeah, like the async stuff in C++ is, like it's pretty straightforward to do asynchronous calls. You can just use std async if you just wanted to do something quick and dirty. You even have, pretty decent support for multi-threading through the std library, so you're not having to do pthreads or do it all yourself. But yeah, coroutines specifically, I think that an elegant implementation of coroutines would make things so much nicer. The thing that sold me on this for being a very valuable tool in game development is how people use it in Unity. Because like in Unity, they have coroutines, which are technically not a language feature. What they're doing is they're taking the IEnumerable interface, that is the iterator interface, and they're turning iterators into something that resembles a coroutine, and then the coroutine run is repeatedly invoked by the engine once you start it. But that, just even being able to do that, to say, here's a little applet, a little function I want you to run for a short time, asynchronously, or not asynchronously, but like separately from this code. That allows you to just, hack together really quickly animated stuff that's animated over multiple frames without having to add like if statements to what you're doing. So I think I want to add support for coroutines in my own engine at some point, but I haven't really figured out how I want to do that because I'm using C++ 17. And I haven't really played around with C++ 20 yet. Okay, so I think this works. Basically, we got a set of values. We pass the pointers to them to mix drag scalar. And then we have a button to set them back to mixed. Alright, so it starts out as mixed. I click and drag and nothing happens. If I type in a number, nothing happens. Okay, there's something broken. Let's take a look at that. So type size is 4, which is correct. All right, let's compare. I'm going to go into the watch window. Man, I got something in my throat. And then I'm going to quickly do a cast for field value. Cast it as a float pointer, and then dereference the whole thing. Okay, so currently it is set to 0. If I hit continue and see the new value, it is still 0. Oh, right, because this is called once for all 3. Okay, And then we'll do a memory comparison between the first, second, and third. The first time we go through is mixed should be false. It is. The second time we go through, the field value and the value pointer should be different. Let me do that. Yeah, 0 and 1. And then is mixed becomes true. That's good. And then we break. So if is mixed, we push the ImGui item flag, push the item flag. Oh, right. Okay. I actually have to do more work here. I was thinking just to wrap the regular drag scalar, but that's actually not good enough here. I do need the value that comes out of this to be assigned to, yeah, I have to actually do the assignment back to the original values. So we'll say if is changed. We'll do a for loop for every void pointer, value pointer in p data. Then we will assign the field value out to it. So we'll do m copy to data. Oh, wait. Sorry, value pointer. Value pointer from field value to type size. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's try that out. Okay, still not quite working. Set a breakpoint. Oh, you're right. What's up? I just had a brain fart. It's a width 64, and I typed in 64 instead of the maximum. So when we went through and we checked to see all the types that ImGui even accepts, the widest was 64 bits, and so I was like, okay, we know it's size 64. It's not size 64. It's width 64. So it's it should be 4. That's the widest that the API will accept, so there's no reason to make it any wider than that. Good catch. Anyway, that's still secondary. Yeah, because for some reason the values are not getting updated correctly, I don't think. I'll set a breakpoint on the mem copy. Okay, click and drag. We've got a is changed set. Field value is currently 2. Which is interesting actually, because the I would have thought that that it would have been 0, because field value is assigned to the first memory address, and they're ordered 0, 1, 2. let me confirm that real quick. Okay, at 0, 1, and 2 respectively. That's correct. So why is field value? So field value, first thing we do is we assign pdata up front. That would mean that we set field value to 0, even though it should be 0 by default anyway, in this case. We do the comparison between value pointer and field value. We push the item flag, we do drag scalar, I'm not immediately spotting what I'm doing wrong. My expectation is that when we get to this function, we've got, 3 values in the array, 0, 1, and 2. My expectation is that field value is set to 0 because it's the first in the array. And then we use it for comparison purposes, and then when we go to actually call drag scalar, we use it as the input and output variable. So the drag scalar should have an internal value of 0, not 2. But somehow when we get to this point in the memcopy, field value has a value of 2, not 0. You're right, God damn it. I just having a bit of a brain fart. Because 8x8 is 64, not 8x4. Thanks though, you're keeping me sharp. You're keeping me from making mistakes that I would totally miss down the road. Well, would it? Does memcopy, because I think memcopy literally accepts type void pointer, doesn't it? Like a void pointer destination, void pointer source. And it takes a size t on it. So I don't think type is the problem. Oh, you mean the width of this? Yeah, I don't think that has to do with this problem. But yeah, you're right. There probably should just be good to make that one byte per element. Otherwise, it'd be. Wait, was I thinking about this earlier? Maybe that's why I picked 4. Let me think about that. Because the void type would be width 64. Yeah, never mind. That should be a car pointer or car array. Why did I have a star there? Well, why did I do any of this? Hang on. Did I use a void star for field value down here as well? Why did I do that? I just wanted a block of bytes. I mean, this code worked though, but probably only on accident. Because we're just using memcopy and memcompare on it. But yeah, this is totally what I meant to do. I just wanted to say, give me a block of bytes, please. Yeah, I don't know why I missed that. Thanks. But yeah, I'm not sure that that's related to this problem. Because memcopy takes void pointer types. It doesn't actually care. So like this absolutely should have been car and then thing and then number of bytes. That's totally correct. I could also use std byte, but I don't really want that. I just want it to be simple C style casts for this because we're using C style APIs. But yeah, the issue down here then. The reason why field value is set to 2, I can't really make it. The only thing I could think of is that maybe drag scalar is not actually changing the value like I thought it would. But I don't know, this is exactly how we used it in the working code. We track whether it's changed. If it has, then we copy from the field value to the value pointer of type size. I'm going to step through this code again. Okay, so at this point we've got 3 values. Okay, so this looks correct. We got field value of 0. And then 0, 1, 2. So as I step over, is changed, is false, and so we continue. I'll set a breakpoint within is changed, hit continue, and then do a change. Field value is now 20. That's okay. That's correct. That looks correct. I dragged to the right rather quickly, and so the delta on my mouse that frame was enough to move the field value to be 20. Okay, that's all looking correct actually. So let's confirm what the values look like after this loop. Okay, that looks like it worked perfectly. See all that? I mean, it's might be a little hard to see on Twitch, but the entire array is now set to 20, and that's exactly what I wanted. So maybe I did screw up something in the types that would impact this. Is changed as true, so we step out. At this point, we've got Yeah, is it fixed? And I just didn't see it. No, it's still showing a dash. What's up with that? So it's like changing the values correctly. So if I set a breakpoint, oh my god, that's so my test. I was doing a local scoped non-static float array, and so the values were not allowing to update. They were resetting every time. Oh my gosh, that's frustrating. So the code was working fine. It was just that I was overwriting the data every frame. Okay, perfect. So this is working exactly as I thought it would, as I wanted it to. So I can reset values, and then we have a mixed value implementation. Cool. That was way harder than it should have been. I just wrote a bad test. Okay, so I think we're in pretty good shape here. I'm gonna take a quick break because my brain is starting to make stupid mistakes. I'll be back in like, let's give it 10 minutes. Yep. And when I get back, we'll wrap up the API. The API for mixed value changes. We'll get the other implementations in. And then I'll call it a stream. I think that anything else I do today on the engine is going to be on... It's going to require that I just sit and focus. But I'll probably be doing other projects instead for the rest of the day. Yeah, I'll be back in just a little bit, 10 minutes or so. Okay. All right. Let's wrap this up. So we've got a decent implementation for drag scaler where you pass in the addresses of all the things that you want the drag scaler to handle, and then it'll automatically determine whether it's mixed or not, and update all the values in the case that they are, or whatever. And then we've got the mixed drag scaler n, which is the multi-scaler that we've been using this whole time. And now all we've got left is to do wrappers for these things. So I copied in the wrappers that I care about. So drag float. Let me clear out all this business. And we're going to go to ImGui widgets.cpp. I'm looking for drag float. Here we go. The drag float is a glorified wrapper around drag scaler. And I can actually probably just do mixed drag float as inline. Huh. Oh yeah, this is the header, so it is an inline. So we'll do basically a call where we use std vector of float pointers. Get a little bit of type safety on the API side, and then we would we would just forward the arguments basically. Cool. And then for the P data, we'll have to do a cast. So that'll be the same structure that we did down below, where we literally construct using begin and end. In this case, we've only got the one vector, so we can just do in braces v dot begin, v dot end. And can I just do that in braces and it'll automatically construct the pull direct constructor? No, I guess not. So what we'll do is we'll do std. Oh right, because I have to tell it the type. That's why. Void star. Like that. So we've got yeah, so that's looking right, but vmin and vmax, there's something different about my implementation. Okay, so yeah, the drag float normally receives the vmin and vmax by value and then passes in the address of them. It's a little strange, but whatever. Yeah. Is that the way that I've done it on my other inlines? Yeah, I guess so. The address of whatever. All right. So now we've got a mixed drag float. Let's test it out. In the inspector, we were doing mixed drag scalar. Now we should be able to do mixed drag float. And we'll pass in the label. We'll pass in a vector of float pointers, which we have here. We'll just do value pointers. This time it'll be a float pointer vector. And then the rest is the other ImGui stuff, the speed, the min, the max, and yada yada yada. So yeah, let's do that. And then that's all it takes. F5 to build and run in one step. Got some warnings. Non-void function does not return a value. Let's stop. Yeah, because I should return the value. Yeah. Okay. Try that again. Okay. And cool. It works just like before. Perfect. All right. And then what else we've got? We've got the mixed drag ints to do. We'll start by commenting their signatures. This belongs on the end of that comment over there. Cool. So mixed drag int is basically a wrapper for mixed drag scalar. What I'll do is I'll copy the code for mixed drag float into mixed drag int, and then we'll just change it for all the other details that we care about. So in this case, we've got label, ImGui type is not float, but it is int. Oh, I have to actually specify. What is, wait, yeah. What does drag int use? Signed 32. And then we can pass in the integers. I suppose if we're being extra safe, we could probably use the uint 32, or sorry, the int 32 type to get it a fixed width type. Oh wait, what am I saying? That has to be void. And the value is we have to change the signature. So this is going to be a vector of type int pointers named v, and then that'll convert into an std vector of void pointer. Cool. I wonder what type checks that they have on this stuff. Because I'm thinking that I may actually want to use the fixed width 32 signed type on my API to make sure that the conversion plays correctly. Okay, but it's actually already defined to be int. They literally use size of int for S32. That's misleading, isn't it? I mean, this isn't my code base, so I guess I shouldn't be so judgmental, but like they're associating the size of int with signed 32. And it's not defined to be a signed 32 width. I mean, it almost always is, but the reason why we have fixed width types is because you can't guarantee the width of these because they differ on platform and compiler. So, yeah, okay, whatever. But it means that I can use ints directly, but it also means that they probably shouldn't call this a signed 32 because it's not guaranteed to be 32 bits wide. But whatever, I guess my code is okay. That's all that matters. You know, with ImGui, I don't think that's actually the case. I'm gonna take a look at their, oops. I'm gonna take a look at their README again. But I'm pretty sure that they operate on all kinds of platforms, including touchscreens, and they literally are unbounded. Like the way that you add this to your project is not even using a build system or like a package manager or anything like that. You literally just include its source files into your code, and that's how you're supposed to include it. Yeah, I'm not really seeing anything on the topic, but my understanding is that it's designed to be used on any given platform. I guess they have implementations for OpenGL, Vulkan, Windows, whatever, but I doubt that they actually went and guaranteed that all those platforms on all of the compilers available for those platforms have the same width. So it's a little just, I mean, as long as you go in understanding that S32 means regular int and not necessarily a 32 bit width int, then you're fine, but they should call it something else. This should literally just be int, in my opinion, to make it so that you understand that it's an int and not actually a fixed width 32. Yeah, I am getting really judgy on this one. But yeah. So we've got mix drag int, mix drag scalar, good, and then these guys need to be implementing the mix drag multiscalar. So that would be, I would copy this code and I'll do one with 4 elements, and then I'll go from there. And I'll need to change the signatures on these as well. Alright, so instead of an array of integers, we accept 2 separate std vector of int pointers, titled field1 and field2 values.
けない君の笑顔が恋しくて星に願うのまた会えるよね
Okay. That's looking closer to what I want. And then like that. Like that. Like that. Okay, that seems pretty good. Alright, F7. These are inlines, and so they're not actually going to be compile checked. But let's go to... Let's try out a couple of these functions before we move on. So on this guy, I'm going to change this to be integers. And then we'll have a vector of pointers to those things. And instead of mixed drag float, we'll do mixed drag int 3. No, mixed drag int, sorry. And this will just be a mixed drag for integer values. And then when we go to reset, we will assign them 0, 1, and 2 integer values. Cool. Alright, that's looking pretty good. It's doing what we want it to do. If I wanted to do multiple fields, let's test that out real quick. Okay, and then we'll do this. Oops. Ah. We'll do mixed drag int 4 or 3 for 3 different fields, and we'll pass in each weight like this. Cool. All right, so we'll have 3 fields. I'll make one of them same value, and the others will have differing values. And we'll have to reset. Yeah, screw it on the reset. I don't care about it. I know this is all probably going to work. Yeah, so the one value we're setting for all of those simultaneously, and now we're setting for all these simultaneously. Cool, it looks like everything is working. We've got a implementation for all of the drag sliders that we probably will use. Implemented in such a way that with just a couple of lines, you can have all the values be independently set and independently flagged as mixed. That seems to be a logical place to stop. I just have to get all these existing places inside of my code, like the transform section of the inspector, to utilize this new fangled way, because it's better. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're really close to being able to do cool stuff, but it seems like there's always another thing, another important thing to get done. Because once this framework is ready to go, then we'll probably be able to start doing stuff like renderers, instead of just doing simple as balls renderers like this. I'm thinking that once I've got the framework done for custom systems to be able to integrate in the inspector, probably gonna want to get materials done before I work on a renderer. I expect that materials will be something that I want to do on the API level and not as a game system feature, so that way you can create a material that's usable by all renderers. Because if you break it down, materials are technically always doing the same job. Yeah, materials, they probably do. Yeah, they probably would be hard. I've never done a material system before. I just know what they do in principle. And I've done my best to lay the framework for doing a decent material system. So for example, my GLSL preprocessor supports shader options, which is a way for you to conditionally compile a shader to work with different systems. So you could, for example, the shader that I'm using for Renderer 2D right now supports batch rendering, or batch quad rendering, batch texture lookup, I guess is what the correct thing is. And that's something that you may or may not want your renderer to support. And so basically, a material system is just a way for you to store the state associated with a shader and decide which shader to use. So my material system would take a shader handle, and then the system can determine which version of the shader to use up to a point. The material would decide what version of the shader to use beyond that. It's complicated. You're right about that. But I think that probably we'll have to tackle that before I start making a renderer, because that's the sort of foundation that I want renderer code to be built on. Whether it's my renderer or a renderer that somebody else makes in the far future. Alright, thanks for joining me today. It was nice to see some new faces. I'll probably be back on the day after tomorrow. I'll see about codifying that into a true schedule. But until then,